Hello and welcome to Movies on the Side. This is Stephen Robles.
And this is Nate Baranowski.
And today we're talking about the man himself, Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones. What? Why are you laughing? I didn't know what to put after
Ford
that.
presents
Harrison Ford. Listen, okay. I think we're talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark today, which is the title of the movie. There's no like Indiana Jones : It's just Raiders of the Lost Ark. I double checked.
IMDb. It is Raiders of the Lost Ark. IMDb.
Yes. What does IMDb have?
Puts it as Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which confuses me because I always thought it was just Raiders of the Lost Ark. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg present a special feature.
Now, listen, we did a lot of biblical references in our bonus episode to Bros and Thou Shalt Bros, but this might be a little blasphemous. When I think of movies between like pre-2000s, I feel like there is a trinity of trinities. All right, you're ready? I'm going to blow your mind. I feel like there's a trinity of trinities. You have the original Star Wars trilogy, right? The 3-movie trinity of Star Wars.
Can we say a trilogy of trilogies? There's literally a word for it.
A trinity of trilogies.
There we go.
There's a trinity of trilogies. You have the Star Wars trilogy, part 1. You have the Back to the Future trilogy, Trinity. And then you have Indiana Jones. And I feel like
the John Williams triumvirate.
The John Williams and Harrison Ford in 2 out of 3. He crossed the Rubicon, as you say. But I feel like there is a trinity of trilogies from our honestly, they all came out before we were born ish. Back to the Future came out a little after we were born. But anyway, I feel like those trilogies shaped like so much of like movies and Cars 2 today is like it's just like big in the mind space. Am I missing a trilogy? Is there a quadrennium of trilogies?
Basically, everything Steven Spielberg touched. So maybe
that is true.
Jaws and not a trilogy. I guess it became one. Jurassic Park became a trilogy. But I'm just look at everything that Steven Spielberg.
But like even like Jurassic, you look at Jurassic Park. I feel like is not a consistent trilogy. And it is now also a franchise like 007. Like you wouldn't call 007 movies a trilogy.
No.
And I feel like Jurassic Park, there's now 6 movies.
Well, Indiana Jones is no longer a trilogy.
But
it's a
pentalogy. I get it. It is a what is that? Not the penultimate. There's like what is the word for like the 5th element? Like the Greek philosophers were like it is the
pentathon. Pentagram.
No. Hold on. 5th element.
Pentagon.
Greek.
Parthenon. I'm just doing word association.
You're just the quintessence. The quintessence of there's 5 Indiana Jones, which is the quintessence. I'm gonna have to.
Stephen, I need to talk about Indiana Jones here for a second.
Yeah, please do.
Indiana Jones came after Star Wars in my life. I mean, also partly after. I believe it came. This one was in 81. I think this might be after Empire
Star Wars
Strikes
was
Back.
70s. Yeah.
But maybe before Return of the Jedi. I think there's a little overlap there.
Empire Strikes Back was 1980.
Okay.
Raiders of the Lost Ark was 81. And then
And then I believe Return of the Jedi was maybe like 83.
83.
Star Wars came to me earlier in life. And then I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. Slightly, I think as everyone does, slightly before their time, because when is a good time to see a man's face melt off? And
You're never ready.
You're never ready.
You're never ready for that.
Most people, I'd love to hear from listeners of the show, if you watch this movie pre being 18, is it a similar experience where you watched basically most of it, which has at times like a weird amount of kind of a violent spurt every once in a while? It's like, whoa, that dude just got shot through the head and is like
the literal
everywhere.
The airplane propeller literally like takes the guy out,
a fellow,
and you see a literal spurt on like the wing of the airplane. So,
right. So like
it's violent.
Does everyone have the experience of having watched this movie, but someone who was guiding them through the experience came to the end and basically, just like Harrison Ford says to Marion, close your eyes, kids. Don't look at the screen.
I have to tell the story now.
This movie belongs in a museum.
Spoilers for this, what is it, 1981? So we're talking about 42, no, nope. 40?
42.
40?
42.
42 years, 42-year-old movie. I knew, so when I watched this movie as a kid, I think we had the VHS, but I don't think we ever watched the VHS.
We had the recording of this movie recorded
like
onto a VHS that also included like Pop-Tart commercials.
Yes.
And like the start of another movie that then got re-recorded over to make room for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes, but I also feel like Star Wars we had on VHS, and I would watch that just randomly on VHS. Indiana Jones movies, it was never like that. Like I never reached for an Indiana Jones movie to watch it on a Saturday afternoon. It was always like Star Wars or other things. It was if Indiana Jones is on TV, I think we watched it. So I don't know like when I actually watched it. It was probably piecemeal. But anyway, the one thing I knew about this movie is that when they open the Ark at the end, no child in any form or function should watch that scene. No child should watch when they open the Ark, because if our listeners have not,
as a kid, made the moment of them opening the Ark even more big and magical, because you're like, I too cannot look upon
my eyes cannot like see no evil, hear no evil.
We need to. You're not now that we're adults, and I watched it with my eyes open last night.
Yes,
the whole time.
I rewatched it too. I saw the scene.
Right, because
someone slams the door. Very good.
But because I watched it with my eyes open as an adult, I would like to, as a way to kind of process through it, I'd love to talk in depth about what happens in that scene in this podcast today. It's
got to be this podcast needs a trigger warning if we're going to talk about it in depth.
I want to talk.
Okay. Let's save it to the end.
It takes away the power of it, because there is some really ludicrous things built into that scene.
There is. I just have to mention, when I was showing my kids the Indiana Jones movies, we've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark and we've seen Last Crusade. I forget what's in Temple of Doom, and I haven't previewed it, so they haven't seen.
Some guy does reach into another man's chest and pull out his heart. So
in Temple of Doom?
In Temple of Doom.
Right, exactly. So I didn't know what to do with that.
You win some, you lose some.
So we were watching Raiders of the Lost Ark. I have my 3 kids. We were all watching it on the sofa. Mm-hmm. My wife is there, and I was like, I know it's going to happen. I still had not seen it. Like, I still didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that there were going to be things flying out of the Ark, and no child can see this.
Right.
And so I was ready with the pause button.
But where were you vis-a-vis like the early Temple and Alfred Molina getting a spike through the head? You just let that roll. You let that roll.
I think. Cool. Yeah, we just let that roll. Let that roll. You just blew my mind. I did not realize that was Alfred Molina.
Now,
that is incredible.
The person who gets a spike to the head was definitely someone who did their best to mold an Alfred Molina face.
Right.
But I would say that in general, the practical effects, it was fine, but it was not.
Yeah.
Alfred Molina, it was not.
So this is about to happen. They're about to open the Ark. And somehow I timed it so wrongly.
Oh, no.
There's one scene where there is a trigger warning. There is a white effigy floating around.
Are we starting about this right? Are we starting?
I'm not going to go into too much detail. I just need to explain that there's
for later. Okay.
There's an effigy of a woman that appears on screen, and then her face becomes like holes, basically.
Right.
And I somehow pause it right at the moment where it's changing from the face to the holes, and now this image is just frozen on screen as all of my kids are watching.
It would be as if you froze Bilbo when he reaches for the ring and briefly becomes like...
And I basically
you caught it.
Like slow motion. I'm like, no, close your eyes. And I was like, I did the exact opposite you're supposed to do in that scene. And and they were
there are worse things to freeze it on.
I know, and it okay, so we'll talk more about that scene.
We'll talk about anyway. Last Crusade's you got the rapidly aging scene. You also got to no child should see that either.
I didn't even try to pause that one. I was just like,
You
we're
let that
gonna roll with this,
Oh, man.
and hopefully the visual effects are cheesy enough where it doesn't strike you too bad.
Okay, back to it.
Yeah.
Going back to
Yes.
it. Indiana
Yes.
Jones, once it came into my life, I was like,
Yes.
oh, this is
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
There is
Why is it
something-
so good? Why is it so attractive? I need
because
to know.
I watched it now,
Yeah, yeah.
and it definitely has some cool, very Steven Spielberg-y moments, like zoom from way out right onto the eyes, like well lit sort of thing. And there are some cool moments. It's not, I would say Jurassic Park is a better movie from like just a movie standpoint. It has some good elements, but there is something so captivating. I've been captivated since I was a kid with this figure and with this adventurous person.
Yes.
That I don't know why it holds such a, like, Dial of Destiny came out. You saw it.
I saw it in theaters.
I know it's probably not going to be very good, but I still want to see Indiana Jones. There's something about Indiana Jones that's like, everyone, I wanted a fedora. I wanted a whip.
Right. I think it has to, part of it, a huge part has to be just the charisma of Harrison Ford. Like, he exudes that character.
And I can't even tell if, I'm sorry, this is blasphemous. I can't even tell if he's like doing good acting in this movie. Like, as I watched it, I think like, I don't know. Like, you're making like faces while like things are happening, and you're being like serious, and you're doing like cool, kind of over the top, cheesy, like punchy fights.
I don't know. Like you said, I don't know if this is a great movie when it comes, like, it's not going to win Oscar for Best Picture. And I feel like the storyline for every Indiana Jones movie, including Dial of Destiny, no spoilers, Nazis and Indiana Jones. And it's this like very clear line of these are the bad guys.
This is the good
Indiana
guy.
Jones is the good guys, and he's got good guys around him. And it's just such a, like, you don't even have to think about it. You're like, swastikas, those people are evil. And this guy's got a whip. So cool. And it's just such like an easy, like, you don't have to think about it. There's no like, maybe there's a plot twist, maybe not, but you don't have to like, it's not a thinking movie.
Do you know?
And I don't mean that disparagingly.
Do you know that there was a Big Bang episode, and I'm not a Big Bang Theory watcher.
I've seen that show. Yeah,
but
I've seen that.
there was an episode where Sheldon, I think his girlfriend watches Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's like his favorite movie. And then afterwards, she's like, "It's not that good because if Indiana Jones had done nothing, the movie would have ended exactly the same. That actually, like, they would have just gotten the Ark, taken it to Berlin or whatever, opened it up, and everyone would have been toasted." And that would have been the end of the movie. And he wouldn't have had to do anything.
That's a fair point,
now,
honestly.
There's
a good point.
There's some other points about, like, if they had gotten it back, maybe they would have found a way to harness the power of, we'll talk about it later, ghosts? I don't know.
But I also think, like, I think comedy plays a huge role in this too, where it's rare to have so much like good comedy with this like fun action. And this movie especially has one of the most iconic moments when there's like the guy with the sword in the desert and he's doing all this fancy sword stuff. And Harrison Ford is like, is he going to sword fight him? And he just pulls out his gun and takes him out. And I heard, or I read, or whatever, it was actually supposed to be a sword fight. Tell me if you've heard this. Harrison Ford was supposed to sword fight. Okay, so I'm pretty sure it's true. He was supposed to sword fight the guy, but I guess Harrison Ford was sick because they were in a foreign country. Like, he was not doing well, had a fever, like he was sweating bullets, like did not feel well. And he was just like, I'm going to end this scene and go to the trailer. And that's actually why he ended up shooting the guy. That's why he just shot him and like left, and they were like done shooting that day. So like it was a total like spur of the moment, and Harrison Ford just didn't feel well, and like, yeah. So I thought that's hilarious.
I have a hard time for some reason between the Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones in his like get up with the hat and the shirt and everything versus whenever I see Harrison Ford in this movie in a suit or as a professor, for whatever reason, I can't relate those two together. Like, I know he wears a suit at times, but every time I see him wear a suit, I think, well, that's Harrison Ford. And whenever I see him in like his full Indiana Jones, like, well, that's Indiana Jones.
Right.
I don't know how I don't like connect those two characters, but it's like, I don't know.
I've seen, listen, TikTok knows what I want to see. And so I've seen a lot of clips of Harrison Ford interviews for like the press of Dial of Destiny. And one of the press people asked him, like, why did you choose to do yet another Indiana Jones? Like at his age, the trilogy was great, Crystal Skull notwithstanding.
I am Indiana Jones.
So he said, basically, but he was like, I wanted to explore this character more. Like, I wanted to learn more about this character. And in Dial of Destiny, the newest movie, he's actually like in a suit more. And he does a little more that's like not Indiana Jones.
He's actually like a decent professor for once.
Yeah, actually, yes. Like he actually does that thing, whether the students are interested or not. And so he wanted to explore that a little more. And I think you do get that in Dial of Destiny. And I just want to say, no spoilers. It was pretty good, not at the level of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, it's not there, but it was a fun watch.
Better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
I think it is. Miles Matheson is the bad guy. He does a great job being a bad guy. And it was a fun watch. Ending was a little lackluster, but I enjoyed watching it, so I recommend. Dial of Destiny. There you go.
Wow, look at that review. Came out quick.
Look at that. I mean, it's
punchy.
Quick, spoiler. By the way, do you know what, Rotten Tomatoes, real quick, before, we got to keep the canon going.
81 critics.
93 critics, 96 audience for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yep. No, I get it.
Beloved.
I get it.
By many.
A lot of cool action scenes. I still think my favorite from this movie is the truck scene of him going under a car, sliding back. And I'd like to see someone in real life getting pulled behind a truck in like a desert and be able to shimmy their way up a rope again to do it.
Yeah.
The him surviving different things is truly,
it's amazing,
great in this movie.
It's amazing.
But so good action scenes. But what I want to get to next is Romance Corner.
I was just about to say Romance Corner because there is romance.
I think that what is her name? Karen Allen is what I think of in my head.
Sure.
But what is?
I'll look it up.
Oh, Ravenwood. What's her first name? Shoot.
Well, you're saying a lot of names.
Marion.
Well, I'm trying to look it up.
Marion.
Just give me a second to look it up. It's
Marion.
Karen Allen.
Marion.
Yeah, she plays Marion. Yes.
Marion Ravenwood.
Yeah.
So, I think Marion as a character is great. And like
She's great.
Her intro might be one of the greatest intros of like a love interest in an old, like they typically didn't have like, they had a lot of damsel women back in the day, and they keep getting, like, I would say Princess Leia got better in various contexts, but there was always like she's in trouble sort of thing. We are introduced to Marion like running her own bar in Nepal.
So we're random,
like, and then drinking some guy in and her just like cleaning up afterwards. She seems so cool. Now
she's very cool.
To be fair, they did fall into some tropes later. She didn't have a ton to do later on. Nope. A lot of her just being carried in a basket.
A lot of dresses. She's in dresses.
But she does, however, hit a guy with a frying pan in an alleyway and then is able to drag his body back from the alleyway, which is an impressive feat of strength.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. No, and I think it's great. Yeah.
They save their like romantic scene.
Yes.
Until very late in the movie, which is strange for most movies. But I want to ask you: do you believe in their romance? And I know you've seen Dial of Destiny, so no spoilers on anything going forward into the future. But just like this movie, bracketed in. What do you think? Romance Corner.
Honestly, I think it's good. Like it's not a deep romance corner. It's not a focus of the movie, but they do have one pretty steamy scene, like you said, towards the end, and I believe it. I think the charisma of Harrison Ford and Marion, like I think it works, and so I think it's the right amount of romance for this movie, and I believe it. I'm down for it.
I think it's the perfect amount of romance for an action movie, because a lot of times in action movies, it's like that's not the point.
Exactly.
But you have to give the different heroes like humanize them in some way, also give them something that they fear losing and all this stuff. What they do great in this movie is they give them a past or history that we don't know as the audience.
Right.
But they we know they used to be together. That's why Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones professor, didn't like him because he was with Marion back in the past. So it was shortcut for, we have a history, so we didn't just meet each other. And I'm always bugged when people meet each other and then kind of
love at first sight.
The Speed, Sandra Bullock, Keanu Reeves thing of if you meet each other in a stressful action movie, I don't believe you have what it takes to have a romance. But in this movie, they have a past. Therefore, they can go on this adventure together, and I think they have some sort of history together. So I like it.
Yeah,
impactful as a youth, I would say as well.
Yes. Okay, we have to jump to the face melting scene. Trigger alert. By the way, real quick, what would you rate this movie before we go to it?
I'm going to give
many melting faces on a scale of 0 to 5 melting faces. Yeah. You got to do that. I'm going to give it a 4, by the way.
I think I'm going to give it a 3.5.
3.5, really?
I'm going to give it a 3.5. I just watched it. I finished it last night. I just watched it. Sure. There is a lot of dubbed, a lot of ADR stuff in this. And there's a lot of stuff that kind of ages a little bit. It's
like
still,
a melting face.
It's still great. It's still great. But as a movie, if you just be just watch this movie, I think if you had no history with it, I think you'd be that's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, I give it a 4. I think it's a classic. So many fun. The Snake Pit.
Now, Last Crusade. No, that's my wheelhouse.
Last Crusade. That is true. That would be high. Well, we have to do that another time then. Might have to do another Indiana Jones. But tell me, what do you want to say about the face melting scene, the ghosts?
Okay, I need to talk real quick. Let's put on your theology bro glasses for a second. Listen, both of us raised in church context. I don't think I ever heard this movie says open the ark and
there's ghosts.
A bunch of ghosts, and then maybe a lady of some sort of lady
Jezebel. It's got to be Jezebel.
Or is it supposed to be some sort of holy angel who just seeks out Nazis?
That turns into a holy holy face. Her face did have a bunch of holes. Yeah.
Anyway, here's what I knew about the Ark of the Covenant is in Jewish scripture in Old Testament, it's you touch it, you die. You get near it, you die. But not you open it up and ghosts come and get you.
Well, just because they didn't write it down doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Doesn't mean there weren't. I mean, now the sand inside of the ark, they open it up.
Yeah.
They sandy. What should be in there? A lot of old bread.
You got the 10 Commandments. You got some manna. You got Aaron's staff that's budding.
Okay,
it says what's in there.
A lot of those would be sand, except for the 10 Commandments, I guess, over time.
Right. Yeah.
But so they open it up. They then have what I think is pretty decent effects of sort of ghostiness.
Right.
That's not bad effects. Right?
Okay. Yeah, it's all right.
Then we start getting the fire. And that is when things get also the time where child Nate got his eyes closed. So I think I always assumed better effects throughout.
Right.
Then it goes into a series of nobody moving and everyone just making this face.
Just screaming or sheer terror. Looks of terror. And there's a bunch of overlays. They're just overlaying colors and streaks of things. Yeah.
Then what I noticed is that this time also everyone sort of gets lightning through the body, right? It's sort of chain lightning, a little Sith lightning, kind of throughout.
Unlimited power. Sorry, I was trying to do my impression. It wasn't very
good. Take me down, complete journey to the dark side of the Force. You've opened the Ark. So, if one of the Nazis had closed their eyes, are they good?
Right. I think so. I think if you see the ghosts, you're toast. I think that's what it says.
I always say. That's how I remember it, for sure.
It's in 2 Thomas chapter 7, verse 5.
See the ghost and you are toast.
See the ghosts, you
close your eyes,
toast.
You stay alive.
Thee before thou, except after thine. Exactly.
So, and then there comes the face melting. And I want to say,
listen,
the guy with the glasses, who is the real medallion on the hand, very creepy fellow.
Right.
He gets a lot of shine for having his face melted. But the other guy, the nameless guy who gets even less character, I think his face melting feels a little bit like he gets a little gooey in like a really weird plasticky way.
I just looked up the movie Poltergeist, which no one should watch ever. That comes out a year after this. And they took their face melting cue, had to have been from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
So there's some face melting in Poltergeist. Never seen it.
Don't watch it. Never. It's
should I watch just the face melting?
No, it's scary. I think it is a better face melting, meaning it is more terrifying than this.
Okay.
Because some of these Raider face melting, it's a little bit like that's some Play-Doh.
Okay,
like
so
that's some clay.
And they kept the shot on the face being melted for much longer than it needed to be. They
just hold it there.
They hold it there. So that means that they were proud of that shot, or they put a lot of money into that shot.
Exactly. They wanted to blow people's minds.
And then something I noticed, a dude's head explodes. The French guy, Bollock, head explodes.
It does explode.
Which I would rather have that happen to me than a face melt.
Yeah, I suppose so.
I mean, it goes like this. I'd rather be force lightninged through me.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Then exploded and then melted.
Yeah, melting is last. I don't want to melt.
Don't want to melt.
Don't want to melt. No.
But I think a lot of shots of it, I could have used much less of it, and I feel like it would have had more. I mean, it's viscerally memorable. I remember the very first time I saw the face melting.
Sure. I think it could have been like less would have been more. Like you could have had just like a lot of audio effects and like shadowy things happening.
They
in
had
the
a
scene.
guy run through a plane propeller and didn't show it, but still gave you the like, oh, you got.
And let's be clear because I just watched it. He didn't run into it. He was literally standing, turned around, and had enough time to see the propeller and go ah.
He should have dodged out of the way. You're saying avoidable.
I feel like drop to the ground. I feel like you have enough time to drop to the ground. Just don't scream. Just drop to the ground. But anyway, I've not been in that position, so who am I to judge? I don't want to be a propeller bro. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to assume
you can survive any propeller. But I mean, like if I had to rework it, if I had to rework a classic movie, that I'm not fit to do it. So let me give him a film bro for a second.
Be a film bro.
I think effects stuff floating around.
Yes.
After the effects of you have the effects of the things floating around. After the floating around parts,
correct.
You do I think the force lightning, fine, sort of thing.
Right.
And I think if you were to have them crumpling to the ground with fire and like holding out hands, I could have used a hand melting and maybe like one quick shot of like a face starting to melt.
And not in like such
imagination of what could have happened next.
And in like a darker environment, because the face melting is such like a well lit, like there's no hiding the clay that is falling from this person. Do it in a dark place where you can like barely see what's happening. You know, be like, wait, is that dude's face melting?
I would not have done the face explosion. I don't think that worked. I don't think visually that worked.
No,
I don't think it was
weird.
Impactful as much. I think, for example, the Raiders, I have to see Last Crusade again, but I think the rapidly aging, although kind of stop motion-y every once in a while, it was a lot better, and it impacted more with the main characters. And if you're going to have nightmares, like I did, after seeing a movie, you want someone coming after you, kind of trying to touch you whilst bad stuff's happening to them.
Right,
and that was a lot scarier. Even than people far off getting their faces melted off.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to have nightmares tonight, so I'm glad we talked about the face melting.
The face melting. And as an adult, I watched it and I wasn't scared.
Oh, that's good. That's great.
I did it. I did it.
You did it. Let us know what you think of the face melting, listeners. You can comment on Instagram at Movies on the Side. And if you want to realize or understand why we said bro so many times in this episode, you should listen to our bonus episode, which was
What
Pure
Maketh
Gold,
a Bro, I believe is what we will call that
bonus
is episode.
Exactly what I'm going to title the episode. What maketh a bro? We're talking about fitness bro, productivity bro. You know what we're talking
I'm
about.
sorry. I'm not sure
What
if you heard me.
maketh
I
a
said bronus episode.
Bronus. Okay.
No, not doing it for you?
I mean, I like what maketh a bro.
Oh, okay.
I thought maketh,
Bonus
you got the
episode
make
didn't
it.
do it for you. Okay.
Anyway.
Never mind. Well, that's fine.
You listen to that bonus episode by going to patreon.com/movies on the side or directly in Apple Podcasts. If you use that app, you can subscribe right there and you access all the bonus episodes right there in the same like feed and stuff. So anyway, you should go do that. And as we always say,
snakes. Why does it always have to be snakes?
oh, that's pretty good. That was pretty good.
It belongs in a museum. Bureaucratic fools.
Are you reading the
Now,
IMDb
why does
plus
he
right
think the Ark belongs in a museum? He watched the Ark burn everyone to the ground.
That's if you open it. Just don't open it.
So
you
he
put it
thinks
behind
it
the
should just
glass
be.
case.
Oh, okay.
You put it behind a glass case like King Tut's mask or whatever. Nobody touches it.
Because
No
if they
touch.
had, I mean, they had to clean
They
it.
do. Yeah, I mean, you put it in like a hermetically sealed thing. And listen, if somebody touches it, they get the same treatment
I don't
Uriah
believe that
did.
Indiana
It's over.
Jones just watched it happen. First off, doesn't immediately become, I don't know, very religious after seeing it
That
all
is true.
happening.
That
He's
is true.
kind of just going to go through the rest of his life kind of like,
You smash
I've
cut
seen
and
a
he's
lot of
like,
things, but I don't believe.
yeah, right after that scene ends, you smash cut and he's wearing like a priest collar. Like that should have been how it
I mean,
ended.
I feel like if you see people get melted by the power of, I guess it's not the power of God in this. It's the power
I
of
guess not.
13 ghosts.
Do you renounce Satan? That's a Godfather quote.
Oh, see, I
Anyway.
don't know
Yeah,
it.
you've never seen it.
We'll do
Yeah.
Godfather
All right.
in the near
Yeah, we'll do
future.
Godfather next.